Welcome to MarkGuy, where we explore self-improvement, motivation, habits, mindset. In today's episode, we're discussing why do girls choose bad boys. You know what no one tells you? The nice guy who finishes last isn't actually nice. He's performing niceness like a transaction, expecting romance as payment. Meanwhile, the bad boy she chooses isn't choosing her back. He's just existing in his own orbit. And that indifference becomes gravity itself. You've been taught that kindness equals attraction, but attraction doesn't operate on moral mathematics. It runs on something far more primitive. Picture this scene because you've lived it or watched it unfold. There's a guy, let's call him David, who remembers her coffee order, texts good morning without fail, offers his jacket when it's cold. He's available, reliable, predictable. Then there's Marcus, who takes 3 days to text back, cancels plans last minute, has that slight edge of danger in his smile. David writes paragraphs, Marcus sends one word. David plans dates weeks ahead, Marcus shows up at midnight unannounced. And here's where it stings. She screenshots David's sweet messages to show her friends how cute he is. But she's in Marcus's bed at 2 a.m., telling herself this time will be different. You want to scream at the injustice of it. But the injustice isn't what you think it is. Let me paint you the psychological machinery underneath this pattern, because understanding it is the first step to breaking free from your own role in this dynamic. The human brain, particularly the female brain in mate selection contexts, isn't wired for comfort. It's wired for genetic optimization and emotional intensity. When psychologists study attraction patterns, they find something called intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The bad boy doesn't give consistent validation. He gives it randomly, unpredictably. One day he's distant, the next he's intensely present. This irregularity triggers dopamine responses far more powerful than steady, reliable affection ever could. Think about it. When do you check your phone more obsessively? When you know someone will respond immediately, or when you're not sure if they'll respond at all. But here's where it gets darker. The bad boy represents something beyond just excitement. He represents a test of her own worth. Can she be the one who changes him? Can she unlock the tenderness he hides from the world? This isn't stupidity. It's a biological script written over millions of years of evolution. In ancestral environments, the male who could dominate resources, who had options, who didn't need to commit easily, he represented genetic jackpot potential. The nice guy's eager availability, his immediate commitment readiness, it signals lower market value in the primitive brain. It whispers, if he's this available, this eager, what's wrong with him that other women aren't choosing him? Meanwhile, the bad boy's emotional unavailability suggests pre-selection other women want him. He has options, therefore he must be worth wanting. Phase 1 of this dynamic starts with projection. She doesn't see the bad boy as he is, she sees him as potential. Every small gesture becomes magnified when he finally texts back, when he occasionally shows vulnerability, when he remembers something she said 3 weeks ago. These crumbs become feasts in her imagination. She's not falling for who he is. She's falling for who she believes he could become with her love. The nice guy, meanwhile, has already shown all his cards. There's no mystery to unravel, no potential to unlock, no story to write. He's a finished book, and humans don't reread stories where they already know every plot point. Phase 2 involves what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Once she's invested emotional energy in the bad boy, her brain needs to justify that investment. So she begins reframing his negative behaviors as misunderstood depth. His emotional unavailability becomes mysteriousness. His lack of commitment becomes independence. His inconsistency becomes spontaneity. Meanwhile, the nice guy's positive traits get reframed negatively. His availability becomes clinginess. His emotional openness becomes weakness. His commitment readiness becomes desperation. The brain protects its investments, even when those investments are destroying it from within. Phase 3 is where the addiction solidifies. The bad boy's inconsistent reinforcement has created what researchers call an anxiety attachment spiral. The more anxious she feels about where she stands with him, the more intensely she attaches. It's the same mechanism that makes traumatic bonds so powerful. The alternation between fear and relief, rejection and acceptance, creates an emotional intensity that stable love simply cannot match. When he finally texts after 3 days of silence, the relief floods her system with more euphoria than 100 good morning texts from David ever could. She's not choosing pain, she's choosing intensity. And in a world of numbness, intensity feels like being alive. Here's where it hurts. While she's chasing Marcus's validation, David is destroying himself, trying to figure out what he did wrong. He's reading relationship advice, working on himself, trying to become even nicer, more available, more perfect. But perfection isn't attractive, it's suspicious. The human brain distrusts anything without flaws because flawlessness doesn't exist in nature. It signals performance, manipulation, or desperation. The bad boy's obvious flaws paradoxically make him feel more real, more honest. He's not trying to win her over, he's just being himself. And that authenticity, even when it's authentically selfish, reads as confidence. You want to know the really brutal truth? Many women know exactly what they're doing. They know the bad boy won't commit. They know the nice guy would treat them better. But treatment isn't what they're optimizing for in that moment. They're optimizing for feeling, for story, for the chemical rush of uncertainty. She's not choosing a partner, she's choosing an experience. And the nice guy offers the experience of a lukewarm bath, comfortable, safe, predictable. The bad boy offers the experience of skydiving, terrifying, exhilarating, memorable. Which story would you rather tell yourself you're living? This isn't about romance, it's about wiring. The same neural pathways that make us check social media compulsively, that make us watch just one more episode, that make us crave plot twists in movies. These are the pathways the bad boy accidentally or intentionally activates. He's not a person to her, he's a drug. And like any drug, the highs get lower and the lows get deeper over time. But by then, she's invested too much to walk away. The sunk cost fallacy kicks in. She's given up the nice guy, defended the bad boy to her friends, rebuilt her identity around fixing him. To admit failure now would mean admitting she wasted months or years on an illusion. And that's when reality hits, usually around 2 a.m., when she's checking his Instagram to see if he's with someone else. When she realizes she's become someone she doesn't recognize, anxious, jealous, constantly performing to keep his attention. The nice guy has moved on by now, or worse, he's still waiting, which makes her respect him even less. Because here's what nobody admits. Women often lose respect for men who pedestal them. It signals that the man doesn't value himself. And if he doesn't value himself, why should she? But wait, let me show you the deepest cut of all. The bad boy isn't actually winning either. He's trapped in his own pattern, unable to form deep connections, aging into a caricature of himself. His emotional unavailability isn't strength, it's armor built from his own unprocessed wounds. He chooses women who chase him because he's terrified of women who might actually see him. The nice guy, the girl, the bad boy, they're all losing in this dynamic. They're all playing roles in a script nobody consciously wrote, but everyone seems to follow. The social media dimension makes this worse. She posts carefully curated photos with Marcus when he occasionally takes her out, creating an illusion of a relationship that doesn't exist. Her friends see the highlights, the mysterious man, the intense chemistry, the dramatic story. What they don't see are the Tuesday nights spent staring at her phone, the anxiety attacks when he goes silent, the slow erosion of her self-worth. Meanwhile, David's stability would make for boring Instagram content. Nobody posts another quiet evening watching Netflix with someone who actually responds to my texts. Stability doesn't get likes, drama does. And we've built a culture that mistakes likes for life satisfaction. Here's a psychological term that explains everything: arousal attribution theory. When we feel physiologically aroused, heart racing, palms sweating, heightened alertness, we attribute that arousal to whatever's in front of us. The anxiety the bad boy creates gets misinterpreted as passion. The stress of not knowing where you stand gets confused with excitement. The nice guy creates no arousal, no uncertainty, no physiological response. He's emotional flatline, and flatline feels like death to a nervous system craving stimulation. So why do girls choose bad boys? Because bad boys make them feel like protagonists in their own story. Because uncertainty creates more neural activation than certainty. Because millions of years of evolution have wired them to be attracted to signs of genetic fitness that no longer predict actual partnership quality in modern society. Because the culture tells them that love should feel like a drug, not like peace. Because they haven't yet learned the difference between intensity and intimacy, between drama and depth, between a spike of dopamine and sustainable happiness. The fourth phase, the one nobody talks about, comes years later. She's 32 now, maybe 35. Marcus is a distant memory, a cautionary tale she tells her friends over wine. She's either settled for someone safe but uninspiring, or she's still cycling through bad boys. Each one a little less bad, a little less boy, but still activating those same worn neural pathways. And sometimes, late at night, she thinks about David. Not because she loved him, but because she realizes she never gave herself the chance to find out if she could have. She chose intensity over investigation, chemistry over compatibility, the known thrill over the unknown peace. But here's where the real reckoning happens. Not for her, but for you. Because if you're listening to this, you're probably David. Or you were. And you're still trying to figure out how to become Marcus without losing yourself. Stop. The answer isn't to become the bad boy. The answer isn't to become nicer either. The answer is to stop playing the game entirely. To stop seeing yourself as either the nice guy or the bad boy. Because both are performances. Both are manipulations. Both are attempts to hack attraction instead of building genuine connection. What would happen if you stopped performing entirely? If you stopped being nice as a strategy and stopped trying to be bad as a counter strategy? What if you just became genuinely indifferent to whether any particular woman chooses you, not from bitterness, but from abundance? The bad boy's power doesn't come from being bad. It comes from not needing her validation. But you can have that same power from a place of wholeness instead of wound. You can be unavailable because you're building something meaningful, not because you're playing games. You can be mysterious because you have depths to explore, not because you're withholding yourself strategically. She didn't leave you. She left the version of herself you reflected. When she looked at you, she saw safety, predictability, a life already mapped out. When she looked at him, she saw possibility, transformation, a story still being written. The tragedy isn't that she chose wrong. The tragedy is that both choices were wrong, because both were based on projection rather than reality. You projected onto her the solution to your loneliness. She projected onto him the solution to her emptiness. He projected onto everyone his fear of being truly seen. Round and round it goes, everyone choosing ghosts instead of humans. And now we reach the climax, the moment of truth that hits every man who's been the nice guy, every woman who's chosen the bad boy, every bad boy who's never learned to be good. It's 3 a.m. You're alone. The performance is over. The audience has gone home. And you're left with the person you've been running from all along yourself. Not the nice version, not the bad version, just the real version, the one who's scared. The one who wants to be loved, but doesn't believe he deserves it. The one who mistakes intensity for intimacy, because real intimacy would require showing up without a mask, without a strategy, without a role to play. This is where it gets uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. Because the truth is, the nice guy often chooses girls who choose bad boys for the same reason girls choose bad boys. It's safer to love someone who won't love you back than to risk being seen and rejected for who you really are. The nice guy's unrequited love is just as much an avoidance strategy as the bad boy's emotional unavailability. Both are ways of staying safe while appearing to take risks. Both are performances designed to avoid the real vulnerability of genuine connection. Think about it. Really think about it. When was the last time you pursued someone who was actually available, emotionally, and practically. When was the last time you showed interest in someone who showed equal interest back? If you're honest, you'll realize you're just as addicted to the chase, to the drama, to the impossibility as she is. You've just cast yourself as the victim in the story instead of the villain. But victim and villain are both roles, both ways of avoiding the terrifying simplicity of just being human with another human. The culture feeds this dysfunction. Every movie, every song, every story tells us that love should be hard, that it should require fighting, chasing, convincing. We're taught that easy love is boring love, that if it doesn't hurt, it isn't real. But here's what the culture doesn't tell you. Sustainable love is boring by design. It's boring the way breathing is boring. You don't notice it until it's gone. The excitement in healthy relationships doesn't come from uncertainty about whether they care. It comes from the adventure of building something together while knowing you're both committed to the journey. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave you sitting there at whatever hour you're listening to this? Probably recognizing yourself in these patterns. Feeling that uncomfortable mix of validation and exposure that comes from hearing your private experience described by a stranger. Here's your phase 1. Stop asking why girls choose bad boys. Start asking why you choose girls who choose bad boys. The question isn't what's wrong with them. The question is what wound in you is attracted to unavailability. Here's your phase 2. Recognize that the bad boy isn't your competition. He's your mirror. He's showing you what happens when someone doesn't need validation. The difference is his not needing comes from disconnection. Yours could come from connection to yourself, to your purpose, to something bigger than any one relationship. Here's your phase 3. Understand that the solution isn't to become what women want. The solution is to become who you are, so fully and unapologetically that you naturally filter for women who want that. The bad boy accidentally does this. He's so himself that he naturally repels women who need stability and attracts women who need chaos. You could do the same thing from a place of health instead of damage. The revelation when it comes is always quieter than you expect. It happens not in some dramatic moment of choice, but in a random Tuesday afternoon when you realize you haven't checked her social media in 3 weeks, when you can't remember the last time you wondered what she's doing. When someone asks about her, and you have to think for a second to remember why she mattered so much, that's when you know you're free. But freedom isn't the end, it's the beginning. Because now you have to figure out who you are when you're not performing niceness or badness for anyone. Now you have to face the terrifying possibility that you might be enough just as you are. That someone might choose you not for your potential, or your mystery, or your availability, but for the simple, boring, revolutionary fact of who you actually are. The bad boy knows a secret, even if he doesn't know he knows it. People want what they can't have, but more importantly, people want what doesn't want them. The moment you truly don't need someone is the moment they feel your gravity. But here's the paradox. If you're trying not to need them in order to attract them, you still need them. True indifference can't be performed. It can only be earned through building a life so full that no one person's absence could empty it. This is the cold truth nobody wants to hear. The game is rigged, but not in the way you think. It's not rigged against nice guys or in favor of bad boys. It's rigged against anyone who's playing it. The only way to win is to stop playing. To stop seeing relationships as games with winners and losers, strategies and counter-strategies. The only way to win is to become so authentically yourself that you either attract the right person or contentedly remain alone. Both outcomes are victories when you're complete within yourself. And now, the final cut, the deepest truth that explains everything. Girls don't actually choose bad boys. They choose the feeling bad boys give them, the feeling of being alive, of mattering enough to affect someone who seems unaffectable, of being in a story worth telling. The tragedy is that nice guys could give them that same feeling if they stopped trying so hard to be chosen and started living lives worth choosing. The bad boy isn't special because he's bad. He's special because he's living for himself. You could do that too. Except instead of living for himself from a place of wound, you could live for yourself from a place of wholeness. But that would require giving up the identity of the nice guy who finishes last. It would require admitting that you've been just as manipulative as the bad boy, just less effective. It would require seeing that your niceness was never nice. It was a covert contract, a passive aggression, a manipulation dressed as morality. The bad boy at least owns his selfishness. You've been hiding yours behind a mask of virtue. The women who choose bad boys? They're not your problem to solve. They're souls on their own journey, learning their own lessons, breaking against their own rocks until they learn to navigate differently. Your job isn't to save them or wait for them or become what they think they want. Your job is to become so rooted in your own worth that you stop needing anyone else to choose you in order to feel chosen. Because here's the ultimate truth, the one that changes everything once you really get it. The choice was never about you. When she chose him over you, she wasn't rejecting you, she was choosing her own pattern, her own wound, her own lesson that needed learning. You were just a supporting actor in her story, just as she was in yours. The main character arc belongs to you alone, and it's time you started writing it. So stop asking why girls choose bad boys. Start asking why you're so invested in being chosen. Start asking what would happen if you chose yourself so completely that everyone else's choice became irrelevant. Start asking what kind of man you'd become if you stopped performing for anyone's validation and started living for your own evolution. The game ends when you stop playing. The performance ends when you drop the mask. The pattern breaks when you choose differently. Not when you choose different women, but when you choose to be a different man. Not nice, not bad, just real. Dangerously, unapologetically, magnificently real. The truth is, people don't choose bad boys or nice guys. They choose mirrors that reflect back their own level of self-worth.